Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men Annual Number 7, cover dated 1983. The cover is by John Romita Jr., penciling and inking this cover image. It is not one of my favorite John Romita Jr. images that he's ever created. It is a pretty weak cover, really, for a variety of reasons. The smallness of the actual picture itself, that black background there. It does make the cover logo pop, and the fact that it's an annual. But some of the choices here in terms of having both Cyclops and Colossus facing away from the reader, and in particular having Wolverine completely in reverse for the reader, not really great design choices there. This image would work better as an anchor image inside the comic, or as a splash page perhaps. Anyway, and John Romita Jr. is not the artist of this annual. Instead, it's Michael Golden. And I really cannot fathom why you don't get Michael Golden to do the cover. I mean, that's what he's famous for from the 90s in particular, all those Punisher covers, really inventive and designy, and he would have been the better choice here for this particular cover. So let's open up this annual to the first page. And the story opens with a baseball game in the backyard of the X-Mansion. And it happens after the craziest winter in living memory. So that's a reference to the winter of 1982. And throughout the land, the sound of wood against horsehide can once again be heard, accompanied by the pop of all manner of beverage cans being opened and the happy cry of batter up. So this is the second time that readers will have seen the X-Men playing baseball in their downtime. And the first was in Uncanny X-Men 110. And we'll see them play baseball again many times later in the history of their title. So this is the era of the team constituting the membership of Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Storm. Illyana Rasputin is hanging around the X-Mansion. The New Mutants have been introduced into the X-Mythos at this point. Logan, of course, here, Rogue and Nightcrawler. And in the background there we have Professor X, who after the Brood Saga is in a body now that should be able to walk, but he's undergoing rehabilitation and physiotherapy in order to help him use those new legs. And his beloved, the Empress of the Shi'ar, Lilandra, and their empire, Magistrix, is seated right beside him on the handle of his wheelchair. So, yeah, this is interesting in terms of the art collaborations on this issue. Michael Golden is the penciler throughout. This is him inking his own pencils here on this first page. So you can see that he's got a very fine ink line for the details of the brickwork on the facade of the X-Mansion there, as well as little details such as the Star of David necklace that is hanging around Kitty's neck. Yeah, a very, very fine line from Michael Golden inking himself. And but there is a whole array of inkers involved in the issue. So the credits don't come quirkily enough until the very last page of this 40-page annual, 40 pages of story. So the title of the story is Scavenger Hunt, and here's the credits here, most of them anyway. Plot and script by Chris Claremont. What that means is that Claremont handed off a plot treatment to Michael Golden, Marvel style, and Golden is laying out and pacing the story according to his own inspirations and skill. And then in terms of the inks, we have a whole host of inkers. So the first couple of pages inked by Michael Golden himself. After that, Tom Mandrake, Bob Wycheck, Terry Austin, Brett Breeding, and so on and so forth. All the lettering is by Tom Orzechowski, and Glynis Oliver is on colors. So let's get right back to that first opening page there. And so Wolverine is about to pitch the baseball to Colossus, who is on bat. And let's see how that goes. Well, we've got some great cartooning here by Michael Golden. Look at that as Colossus swings the bat and hits the ball crack square in the center. And Professor X here, very impressed by Peter's shot and applauds it. And up goes the ball into the upper atmosphere. Nightcrawler says, I think I'll let that one go, mein Freund, because he has been teleporting. They're allowed to use their powers, actually, for this game. And Logan says, yeah, me too, Wolvie, says Rogue. Congrats, Petey, says Logan. You just put another ball into orbit. No, we didn't. Not this time. Look, it's coming back down, says Rogue. And so it appears to be, except what's coming back down is not a baseball. And Kitty sees that the trajectory is all wrong unless it bounced off something on the way up. And Lilandra instantly recognizes what it is. Shara and how is this pronounced? Ki-Ithri preserve us. It's a ship. So, really great layouts on these pages here. Interesting to have just 2 panels on this third page. We've got the shadow of the ship and also the side of the ship hovering above the X-Mansion there, and all of this Kirby tech about it. So we see a little bit of an explanation in the third-person narration. Massive pressor beams hammer the astounded mutants to the ground and nearly unconscious as the unknown vessel reverses its main drive and comes to a complete stop directly above the mansion. So here on this page we have Tom Mandrake coming on inks, and there isn't too much in the way of a stylistic difference between the way Golden is inking himself on this page and the way that Mandrake is inking Golden's pencils on this page. What that reveals to me is that Golden's pencils are pretty tight for the inker. Nice kind of wavy effect here in the background of the sky. As I mentioned there, Golden doing a good impression of Kirby tech. And when we turn the page, we're going to get a 1-page shocker in terms of who emerges from that ship. Let's turn the page and see who it is. Well, it would appear to be Galactus. And he says, greetings, Earthlings. I come in peace, which doesn't sound terribly like Galactus. What an image that is. Great upshot on Galactus there by Golden. All of those Kirby, what are they called again? Kirby, I'm trying to remember I'm just blanking on the name for these little black circles. Kirby dots, that's what they're called. Kirby dots in the background there. All very deliberate from Michael Golden. So what is going on? Of course, eagle-eyed readers would be wondering what is up with the color scheme on Galactus's costume or his armor, because it's not the usual color. So what is going on? Well, let's continue with the story. So of course, Lilandra above all is shocked at the appearance of Galactus, and the professor uses his telepathy to probe and see what's going on. He says to Lilandra regarding Galactus, he said he came in peace. Perhaps a mind probe will yield some idea of his true intentions. And the professor thinks to himself, odd, Galactus registers as a psychic null, almost as if he doesn't exist. But wait, I sense another presence. I'll attempt contact. And what happens here is there's this weird wave effect. Reminds me of the Proteus episodes of Uncanny X-Men 127 and 128, and some of the kind of weird effects that John Byrne created in his pencils, that kind of stretching of the professor's features, really well done by Michael Golden. Now the X-Men are conferring in terms of what to do next. By the way, just look at the level of detail there on Nightcrawler's shirt. Really, really tremendous and controlled level of detail. So Nightcrawler says of the professor, we can see his his hand trembling there. He's in deep shock in his condition. I'd best not risk porting him to the infirmary. So at this in this point in time, Nightcrawler is the X-Team's medical officer. He's got some medical training, and that's one of his roles as part of the team. Wolverine says, at least Charlie got the answers we needed. So He's inferring the Galactus has not come in peace, that that the arrival is hostile. And we shall proceed accordingly, my friend, says Storm. And let's see what that amounts to. So she's using her elemental powers against Galactus. And what does he say in response? Well, he says something unexpected there. He says, wow, this is neat. She created a storm out of nowhere. I've never seen any human do that before. And then his speech pattern changes and he says, in more familiar diction, have a care, mortals. The harm that befell your professor was unintentional and he would quickly recover, but Galactus will permit no one to assault his person or stay him from his course. And what is his course? What's he up to? I require the use of your domicile. For your own safety, I suggest you remove yourselves from the premises and not attempt to deter me. So we get a nice image here of the X-Men determined to challenge Galactus in terms of what he says he wants to do. And they're ready to roll against him, though I don't know what on earth Wolverine could do against Galactus. Really, the only two X-Men who might have any kind of shot against him would be Storm and Rogue. And so Galactus tells them, you were warned, Nats. Those few words, that one gesture, bring instant, absolute oblivion. Great spotting of blacks there in the artwork. And when, shortly thereafter, it passes, unglaublich, says Nightcrawler. It should be unglaublich. And Wolverine says Sucker was as good as his word. I'll give him that. He wanted the house, he took it. So what do we do now, says somebody. We get it back. And that is a great image there. So we've got a huge hole, gaping hole, where the X-Mansion was, and the remains of, or rather the water from the swimming pool down in the bottom of the pit. That's really nicely done. Now at this point, I want to make a comment on Michael Golden. And that is that he is a very influential artist on some of Marvel's superstar artists from the late 80s and early 90s. So some who cite Michael Golden as an influence include Arthur Adams, who I'm pretty sure must have studied this annual very closely, as well as Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane. All three of those cite Michael Golden as a big influence on their art. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, how is Golden an influence on Jim Lee, or how is he an influence on Todd McFarlane? Because their styles seem different. Well, it's more in terms of layout and the way that Golden would include such things as these types of anchor images, big anchor images on the page, and more designy layouts as well. So we'll see some of those in the course of my review of this annual. But it is my conjecture, my guess is all three of those I've named, Arthur Adams, Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee, would have been very much poring over all of the artwork and all of the design work and layouts of Golden's in this particular issue, especially because a couple of years earlier you've got Avengers Annual number 10, which is referenced in this annual, and he's inked there by Armando Gil, and it's a different effect created by Gil. It's kind of that older 70s brushwork style inking, whereas here you're seeing, you will see tighter inking, some pen nib inking by Terry Austin on his pages coming up shortly, and it is more indicative of the way that the inking would go in the 1980s and 90s, and also the look of the more fine line detail in Marvel art in the 80s and 90s. So here we are, chapter 2, and this is Bob Wycheck coming on board for this section of the annual. The annual divided into a number of different chapters. Here we pick up with the X-Men aboard the Blackbird, and what is happening here is that the professor is using his telepathy to pinpoint Galactus's, quote-unquote, Galactus's location. Take care, Professor. Remember the consequences of your initial psi probe, says probably Storm. And It is Storm, and the professor replies, "We're almost totally ignorant of our foe Storm, since we cannot match his raw power, knowledge, and cunning must be our keys to defeating him." So Lilandra briefed them on Galactus, and they now get a shock in terms of where Galactus's psionic trail leads them, because it leads them to S.H.I.E.L.D's helicarrier. So he's somewhere aboard, says the professor, yet how could so huge a being even fit on a ship built for human beings? So the professor orders Nightcrawler and Kitty to reconnoiter. Off they go, and Lockheed tags along as well. It's a nice upshot there of the helicarrier by Golden. Golden, very, very good with all kinds of technology. So we see that very much here with his shot of the helicarrier. And we get a little blurb there in the narrative captions about S.H.I.E.L.D. and the helicarrier. And when we turn the page here, we're going to see a very interesting piece of work from Golden. And remember what I said, Claremont is supplying Michael Golden with a plot treatment. So Golden is free to lay out the pages as he sees fit. And what he does on this particular page, page 9, is a tribute, an homage to a very famous page from Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 2, the Jim Steranko series from, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like 1969, which was censored by the Comics Code Authority because the page implied a sexual relationship between Nick and his girlfriend slash partner, La Contessa Valentina Allegro de Fontaine. And so we hear, or rather we see, Golden taking the opportunity to homage that famous page of Steranko's here with all of these wordless panels and the little details, the zeroing in here on the tape player instead of a record player. Well, actually, it's a tape player come record player, whereas in Jim Steranko's original, it was a record player only. We see the champagne and the cigar there, and like the close-ups on and the various on her lips and so on and so forth, and then the silhouetted final panel. So yeah, really interesting stuff from Golden, and Claremont getting and understanding what Golden was up to and leaving those panels free of any dialogue here. And who drops into the middle of Nick Fury and the Contessa having an intimate moment, except for Kitty Pryde, and she is shocked by this strange creature that pops right before her and bursts out the side of the helicarrier in the shape of a wooden Indian, of all things. And notice the color scheme as well, the green and the purple. So Kitty's taken by surprise, and then suddenly she realizes this is someone's apartment. That man, that woman, what have I done? And Nick Fury turns to her, "Before I lose my temper, young lady, I want an explanation. Make it real fast and real good." So she's apologetic there. Nightcrawler arrives and he apologizes for the intrusion, and they teleport out the hole in the side of the helicarrier. And Dum Dum Dugan arrives and asks Nick, "If you don't mind me asking," and Nick replies, "A panty raid's more like it. What they did wasn't an attack. A panty raid's more like it, like a prank. Those kids, super types, are getting out of hand." And then the Contessa realizes that Nicholas Fury's eye patch is gone. So how did that happen? Very intriguing stuff. And here we go. We're at chapter 3 now, and this is where we get very, very interesting indeed. Terry Austin inking Michael Golden's pencils. And our scene, or rather our location, is the Savage Land at the bottom of the world. So here, very interesting to see Golden. Again, remember, he's just getting a plot treatment from Claremont. We have this Tyrannosaurus up against these pterodactyls while the Tyrannosaurus is being attacked by these sea dinosaurs. And yeah, that's really interesting, really nicely done. So there's just, it kind of conveys what is savage about the Savage Land, as well as what is fantastic about it too. This is a really nice shot, upshot of the Blackbird up on a hill and the X-Men out and about, and Wolverine asking the question, "You sure we're in the right place, Charlie?" And the Professor telepathically communicates to Wolverine, "Our quarry is making no effort to hide his trail, Wolverine, almost as if he wants us to follow him." "None of this makes any flaming sense," says Wolverine. "What could he be after here? Heads up troops, movement in the trees, 2 people moving fast and closing. So who could they be?" So Wolverine pops his claws, and Lilandra here brings out, well, what is it? In the narrative captions it says her energy sword. It's a lightsaber. She's using a lightsaber. But again, I just want to point out before moving beyond this page, you can see, can you not, the layout influence on the likes of Arthur Adams, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee in particular, Arthur Adams and Jim Lee in particular. You know, instead of having 6 panels on the page telling the story, where Golden is letting the artwork breathe, and there is therefore a greater emphasis on the artwork and quality artwork for the reader, and that is what those 3 gentlemen, Arthur Adams, Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee, took away from their study of Golden's work, and as I said, probably in particular this annual. So who arrives? It is Kazar, Lord of the Savage Land, and his wife Shanna O'Hara, and he introduces them, or her, to the Uncanny X-Men. I don't know that she's ever met them before, but they've met Kazar before. I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to use my brain here and think whether they have all of them met Shanna before. So what he's got to say though is interesting. You haven't noticed a slightly kidnapped saber-toothed tiger by any chance? That's Zabu, and he tells them Zabu's just been swiped by someone. So the plot is thickening here. Rogue says, "This is going to sound real loony, but while I got no idea who's doing this, I think I may have figured out why. The creep steals our mansion, Colonel Fury's eye patch, and now Lord Kazar's pet. I betcha it's a scavenger hunt." And that indeed is what it is. By the way, interesting to see the length of Rogue's neck there. Quite a long neck she has. And that just reminded me in the moment of the long necks that Whilce Portacio would draw. Again, I wonder, was he a student also of Michael Golden's pencils and layouts? And somebody says, "That's the silliest thing I ever heard." You got a better idea? Must have been Kazar then, Lord Kazar, any of you. "Professor, any comments?" And he says, "Rogue's theory is intriguing, Storm. Unfortunately, it brings us no closer to identifying our quarry and putting an end to his rampage. X-Men, he is on the move again, heading due north." And it looks like a family of Triceratops here in the foreground as well. So Golden enjoying himself drawing this little section, I would say. And then we're on to chapter 4, set in New York City. In a Fifth Avenue mansion famed throughout the world. So this is, of course, the Avengers mansion, and we're here in their ready room, in their assembly room. Jarvis is there with She-Hulk, and who do they see out on their front lawn except the Fantastic car? But what's all that clutter atop it? "Stolen property, I'll bet," says She-Hulk. And there are the thieves. I recognize them both from our files. The Steel Guy's Colossus and the Gal's Rogue, one of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So obviously the Avengers not clued up on the fact that Rogue has joined the X-Men as of issue 171 of Uncanny X-Men. So She-Hulk runs out, and right at the gates there we have Rogue and Colossus, and they don't see She-Hulk running up right behind them. And we get a number here for Avengers Mansion, number 890 on, let me just double check this, on Fifth Avenue. So 890 Fifth Avenue is Avengers Mansion. That's interesting. Okay, so She-Hulk is thinking, who do these bozos think they are anyway? Ripping off the Avengers is nothing sacred. They're Colossus in some kind of flying bathtub heading downtown. What need has he for women's costumes, says Colossus. Colossus, what need have the Avengers for so many? That hovercraft's loaded. He can't move fast or maneuver. We've got a good chance of finally catching him. So we've got to put together here that Rogue and Colossus are after the person who's stolen the Fantasticar as well as costumes. It'll turn out to be the Wasp's costumes from Avengers Mansion. So Rogue is just about to fly off with Colossus when she's caught from behind by She-Hulk, who smashes her on the ground. Colossus instantly turns into his living organic steel form and catches She-Hulk's punch. That's really, really well done there. By the way, these pages are inked by Brett Breeding. He does a decent enough job, but not my favorite inker thus far. I think I much prefer Golden's own inks on himself. Much prefer Tom Mandrake's inks, Bob Wycheck's, and Terry Austin's to Brett Breeding. So we have She-Hulk getting out of like kind of somersaulting away from Colossus, and then Colossus being struck by a repulsor blast of Iron Man's. Excuse me, fella, he says, but didn't your mother teach you to be polite to ladies, even mean green ones? Iron Man may not be an active Avenger anymore, but I'm not going to fly on by and let one of them be trashed. Now, in this era, in late 1983, the Iron Man that we're looking at here, Tony Stark is not inside the armor because he's struggling with his alcoholism again, and inside is his personal bodyguard, James Rhodes. Oh, and here we get another page penciled by Terry Austin, and it concerns Doctor Strange. So at that moment, in a townhouse on Bleecker Street in the heart of New York's famed Greenwich Village, the master of the mystic arts, sorcerer supreme of Earth, meditates in his sanctum sanctorum, blissfully ignorant of the night's events. That's about to change, as somebody steals, burgles his sigil window. The window gone, his shield spells are totally disrupted, and all of these demons emerge from his building. So that's a pretty cool panel there as well. And Michael Golden did a little bit of work on Doctor Strange. One issue in particular, if my memory serves, I'm not swearing to this, but maybe it's issue 55 is the Michael Golden one. I have a copy of that. I must get around to reviewing it one particular day. Then we're back to outside Avengers Mansion and back to Brett Breeding's inks on Golden's pencils. Just not as good as Austin here or any of the other inkers. And what happens is they find everybody gets around to explanations. And, or they're about to get around to explanations, but Rogue decides that these jerks will never listen to us. Surprise. Not only can I take a punch, but I can give as good as I can get, and then some. The slightest touch, my flesh to yours renders you unconscious and transfers your powers to me. So here we'll see Rogue absorbing the powers of She-Hulk, and Iron Man uses his repulsor blast on Rogue, and we learn from his thought balloons that in fact he is not Tony Stark, but rather James Rhodes. Oh wait, he doesn't actually think that on this particular page. It's later on. It's here that he thinks it in this particular panel. So the fight continues again. This is Brett Breeding's inks, and so you can see the back and forth here of the fight. But what happens is, in the middle of it, Kitty Pryde phases through Iron Man's armor, which of course disrupts the electronics, so he is immobilized. And Kitty comes and tells them, "What are you doing to Colossus? While you dummies are wasting time, our phantom burglars hitting his next target." So off they go, and Kitty blows a kiss to Iron Man in apology for the disruption of his armor. I like that little drawing there of Lockheed kind of flying upside down and looking as well. It's nicely done. And then we have the Avengers picking up the pieces. She-Hulk is still unconscious. Iron Man's getting up again. And Jarvis asks Iron Man, could you convey She-Hulk to our infirmary? The medical computers possess the necessary data from the Avengers' last encounter with Rogue to deal with her affliction. Because, of course, she's lost her power and her memory temporarily. This is most unnerving, says Jarvis. I never dreamed the X-Men might become villains. And Iron Man says, I hate to say it, Jarvis, but I've got a feeling we all jumped to the wrong conclusion. From the way they talked, they were chasing the real crook. If we hadn't interfered, they might have caught him. Any idea what was stolen, Jarvis? Asked Iron Man. I believe, sir, only the Wasp's costume collection. And that takes Iron Man by surprise. He asks. And Jarvis says, my sentiments exactly. And of course, that's a reference to the fact that the Wasp, basically, going back to the Jack Kirby Stan Lee days, would change her costume, tweak it, or change it entirely issue to issue. And it's funny because, you know, Rogue is another character who changes her costumes a lot in Claremont's run. And also Kitty Pryde is always changing her costume as well. When she is when she is showing up in the Uncanny X-Men comics before she goes to Excalibur. A few minutes later, a few blocks down Fifth Avenue, they punch through the floor, it seems. Is it the floor of some other mansion on Fifth Avenue? Which one could it be? Well, it is the Hellfire Club. And now all the X-Men are together at this point. And who do they see except for the White Queen on a catafalque? So Kitty says, after we captured Mastermind, and this gives us the clue as to when this story is taking place. It has to take place after the revelation that Mastermind was manipulating everyone in issue 175 of Uncanny X-Men. And it has to happen around the time that Cyclops is away from the team and on honeymoon with Madeline Pryor. So that's the time period for this particular story. So what happens here is there's a little piece about Kitty feeling sorry for the White Queen and Storm saying the professor offered his help, but it was refused. To my mind, Kitten is no less than she deserves. And of course, that's a callback to the body swap that Storm underwent with the White Queen in issues 152 and 152 and 53 of Uncanny X-Men. And here, Wolverine is thinking about the recent changes in Storm's appearance, which goes back to the adventure in Japan and her team up with Yukio. And he thinks to himself, Storm's change is more than cosmetic. She's wilder, tougher, walking mine and Yukio's road. Wish I could be sure that's right for her. So, as Wolverine moves up to the White Queen's catatonic body, he finds, he's sniffing around the bouquet of fresh flowers on the White Queen's chest and extrudes his claws. And then that bouquet of flowers turns into a water gun and splashes him. A water gun, it transforms with a pop and splashes him. It's the flowers, they ain't real. And who arrives at just that moment except for Sebastian Shaw, the Black King of the Hellfire Club. And of course, he threatens that their trespass will cost them dear. And meanwhile, this water gun pops and transforms into a type of bouncing ball, which Rogue leaps forward to grab. But instead of catching the ball, she ends up punching Sebastian Shaw in the face. And of course, that's a mistake, and he explains why. Thanks to my own mutant powers, the harder I'm hit, the stronger I become. So he's going to be physically the equal of Rogue's. But he's attacked by Nightcrawler teleporting around him. And in the meantime, that bouncing ball pops and transforms into a rocket and says, You all look like you're having so much fun. I wish I could stay and join in, but I'm late and I've lots still left to do. And off he goes and says, I wonder how the others are doing. I wish I'd never promised not to peek. I shouldn't worry. I'm getting great prizes. I'm sure to win. And Nightcrawler thinks, stupid move. I'm lucky Shaw didn't snap me in two, but that voice distracted me. So the rocket bursts through the ceiling of the underground catacomb beneath, or basement beneath, the Hellfire Club's mansion. And at this point, Storm, enraged, starts using her powers to create a whirlwind that helps the X-Men exit the basement. She thinks here to herself, flowers, guns, balloons, now a rocket. We're obviously up against a shape changer, and I think one who means us no real harm, although his antics may yet get us all killed. It's almost as if we're playing a child's game. So, you know, the mystery is building, and little clues are being given to readers in terms of what is going on in this story, if readers haven't already recognized who the antagonist is. So Storm says, our mission has nothing to do with Sebastian Shaw or the Hellfire Club. We tried to catch a thief and failed for the last time. The madness has gone on long enough, and I mean to see it ended. So off they go. Storm saying, old scores here must wait to be settled another day, leaving Sebastian Shaw to threaten, that day will come, Wind Rider, and sooner than you think. You can count on it. And what was stolen here, except for the Black Queen's outfit, was stolen from the Hellfire Club. Now, this is a good point to draw a conclusion to this review of annual number 7. We'll call this part 1. We're midway through the 40 pages of the issue. There's 39 pages of story, and then that final credits page. So do check back again next week for the second part to this review. I do hope that you have enjoyed it thus far. The story is pretty whimsical, but Michael Golden's art is excellent, in particular when it's inked by some of the better inkers that are working on his pencils, including Tom Mandrake, Terry Austin, Bob Wycheck, thus far. Let me know your thoughts on this annual in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.